Let's start by adding a select dropdown to our form, which will allow us to select the token that we want to trade for one of the other users' NFT. For that, we will make use of the select component. So, let's create a div with some spacing. In which we will add the select component from Material Tailwind. And here, we will also add some options for now. As we can see, we have a form here with test. We can also add a label for our select. Now, we need to list all the tokens of the user's account in this select option. For that, we will, again, make use of the use Axios hook. But first, let's get the current logged-in user's address. And let's get the user tokens using the use Axios hook. You will get data as tokens data, a loading state as tokens loading, this will return an token array and we will call the MultiversX API on the URL accounts user address and tokens. This will be a GET request. If we use the wrong hook here, we should have used the use getAccountInfo. Okay, so every time this component is mounted, we will get the tokens data of the current logged-in user. Now, as we know from previous requests that we've worked with tokens, we know that raw data coming from the API has the amounts. The amounts are not denominated. So, for that, we can create a variable formatted tokens data. This, of course, it's an iToken array. So, for null, initially it will be null. Okay, we can create a function that retrieves, that formats these amounts. So, formatted tokens data. The tokens data. And we will replace the token balance to formatted amount. This time, we will not need to show the name, so we will pass the false property. After the tokens were formatted, we can set the formatted tokens data. Okay, so it looks like we have a small problem here. This should have been an array. Okay, now every time we load this page, we can see that a network request is made for the user tokens, and we have the response here. Now we need to list them in our select input. And let's do that now. So, we will delete this dummy data, and we will then loop through the formatted tokens data. But we will only want to show this piece of code if we have any formatted data tokens. So, we will do this conditionally. And we will loop through the formatted tokens data. There we go. Okay, and we will add some values in the option component as a child. This just adds the token ticker or token identifier and the balance to our field. Also, as a value for this option, we need to pass the token identifier. Now, if we have a look at our form, it's empty and it's not displayed because we need to call our function. So, when this component is mounted and we are watching for tokens data, we make sure that tokens data exists, and we can then safely call our formatted tokens data function. Now, we can revisit our page, and as we can see, we have the token ticker or identifier, and then the balance available. The next field we want to add, it's a simple input field that will collect the amount. But first, we are not done with the offer token. We need to set an on-change event for our select. So, let's add that. So, every time this value changes, we will set the field value of the offer token to the value. Also, we can add some error state, which will be a boolean of errors, .offer token. Great. Now, let's add the next input. So, we will go further and add a new div. This time, we will use an input and not a select. As well, we will have an on-change event on this one. We will set the field value of the offered amount. To the event current target value. We will add a placeholder as undefined. We will also add the cross-origin flag. The type, in this case, will be number. And the label will be offered amount. Everything looks good so far. So, we can now move on to our next input, which is the accepted address input. So we will use the same div to have some spacing between and the same input component. Set the placeholder and cross-origin flag. we can set errors. Okay, this is the accepted address and we forgot to put for this one. We will put an error for this one. The offered amount. We will put a label. And of course, this one will have an on-change event as well. So, what we want to do in this case is first set the field value of the accepted address. Then, we would like to check if the address is valid. And we would like to create two new variables. One of them being setAcceptedAddress is valid. And set the accepted address in the current context. Again, if the address is valid. If not, set it as an empty string. So, let's create these two new variables. The initial value is false. And also set the accepted address with the initial value of an empty string. Okay, we have a small error here. So, we've corrected it now. All right? So, now we have the offered token, we have the offered amount, and we have an accepted address, which we can see that it validates only when we enter an invalid address.